What's the most disgusting thing you've ever tasted? Story 1. Jones Soda made this novelty pack of sodas with a Thanksgiving theme. So like one was cranberry, decent, one was turkey, gross, but one was Brussels sprouts flavored. It was inhumanly disgusting. They tried to add this butter flavor to it, and I literally wanted to vomit from half a sip. Story 2. When I lived in Russia, I once tried a beverage called, I believe, tan. It was fermented, bubbly skim milk. I've lived across the world. I have tried every cuisine, from fried worms in Zambia to Louisiana gator sausage. Every time I tasted something that went against my normal palate, I thought, hey, this is a chance to learn something. Because, for somebody out there, this is their all-time favorite dish. Fermented, bubbly skim milk was where I drew the line and said, I don't know who has this as their favorite drink, and I don't care to know, because this is wrong. Story 3. Some super stanky. She had some nasty discharge and I didn't know about it, and the lights were off so couldn't see anything. Was super horny and didn't want to be rude and tell her she smelled awful, so I went with it enthusiastically. But 30 seconds in, and I had to stop. Lights came on and, my God. Story 4. I put that thing on my nails that's bitter AF to help you stop biting them. I was curious what it would taste like, so as soon as I put it on my nail, I licked it. Turns out it needs to dry on the nail first. So instead of it drying on the nail, it latched onto abs dried in my mouth. And I had this absolute feral rancid taste in my mouth for a good 20 minutes. Story 5. It's not that gross compared to some of the other things people have tasted here. But for those who have been to Walt Disney World or World of Coke and tasted Beverly, you know. It is a bitter, carbonated soda from Italy, and it is disgusting. Everyone who drinks it makes a face. Story 6. Paxlovid. I am part of an uncommon, but not rare, group who has the side effect where it makes everything taste horrid. I can only describe it as a mixture of having your mouth open in a coal mine and tasting the dust and actual sewage. And I had that go for a week, and while other tastes could briefly remove it, any palate cleanser made it so it was all you could taste, and it was the baseline. Still happy I took it because permanent neurological damage risk is not my idea of fun, but it was still unpleasant. Story 7. Liquid prednisone. Back in the mid-1990s when my older son had asthma and had to inhale albuterol and take liquid prednisone, he had to do this from 21 months of age to 2 years old. I think eventually they changed liquid prednisone to a much more easily ingested pill or something. It doesn't matter. That boy is no longer on this earth. Not because of asthma or the horrid taste of liquid prednisone, just because of mental illness and his hopelessness with overcoming it. R.I.P. my baby Harley. Story 8. Someone brought a cheesecake in for a potluck at work once, only it wasn't cheesecake. It was some kind of onion dip made to look like a cheesecake. When you take a bite of something and expect it to taste like one thing, and it tastes like something else entirely, that's a nasty surprise. Story 9. My own cum. Short story. I had a big fight with a woman I used to date. We ended up having makeup intimacy, and she told me that she wanted my load up in her mouth, which, of course, I agreed. But it wasn't expecting a revenge move from her. She told me, if you are really sorry about what happened, don't resist and swallow, and gave me a white kiss. 110. Disgusting flavor. Sticky, and I had to clean my mouth 2 times to fully remove the aroma. But this all made her laugh. Her jerk off for weeks. We had a pretty nice relationship until we parted ways. She moved to France. 1010 would date her again, even with the risk of being forced to taste that again. Story 10. I once got a really bad bout of food poisoning, and I vomited so much and so hard and kept dry heaving that I think I started vomiting out food that was near the end of its cycle. I vomited out what essentially seemed like my own chute. I'm not exactly sure if that's what it was, but by golly, the taste and smell and texture and appearance have convinced me to this day. Very awesome experience. Story 11. I once siphoned silicone cooling fluid, and to get it started, I provided suction from my mouth. Some of it got into my mouth, and it tastes bitter and pretty bad. When I was a young kid, I used to like to squish ants with my finger. One time out of curiosity, I tasted my finger after. She also tasted bitter and pretty bad. Story 12. I was at a party once in college. It was dimly lit so you couldn't see much in the house. My ex-boyfriend handed me a dark blue cup and told me he made a vodka drink for me. I took a sip and it was vile. He laughed at me and pulled out a bottle of clam juice behind his back. The chute was expired. It was rotting clam juice. As him and the entire party laughed at me, I ran outside and vomited. Thank goodness I dumped him after. Story 13. When I had COVID back in 2021, I took Paxlovid. It caused a bitter taste to leak through my saliva. The closest thing I can compare it to was a bitter apple spray to keep dogs from chewing hot spots. It wasn't even a taste, really. It was just soul-splitting bitterness. I couldn't swallow anything, including my own spit. I spent hours with my face hanging over the sink while I just let the spit drip out and used water to rinse my mouth every 60-90 seconds when the taste grew too overwhelming. I stopped taking it after the first dose. My dad said he had a similar experience when he had radiation for cancer that affected his taste buds. He carried a spit cup and didn't eat much for about 6 months. I don't know how he made it through, but I'm grateful he did. Story 14. My daughter and I went to a Chinese buffet in Tucson one night. We filled our plates and ate, and we each commented on eating something that tasted awful. It bitten into my muscles that tasted foul, rotten, and made me gag. My daughter ate a piece of cantaloupe and declared that she knew it was even worse than my muscle. I told her that there was no way on earth that bad cantaloupe could taste worse than rotten mussels. So I tasted a piece of cantaloupe. She was right. A bite of bad cantaloupe tasted like the smell of passing and was several orders of magnitude worse than a rotten, spoiled mussel. We started laughing and laughing until we were snotty and hunched over and trying not to fall out of our chairs or wet ourselves. We were asked to leave. We were laughing so hard we had to lean on each other to walk out. So my answer is cantaloupe. Story 15. Would have to be the time I left my retainer on the kitchen table when I had been eating and forgot to put it back in and went to bed. I tiptoed back into the kitchen later that night in the dark. Everyone was asleep, so I left the lights off. Grabbed it off the counter where I could see its outline in the moonlight. Popped it straight in my mouth, with hundreds of ants all over it. Screamed and then choked on them. They were crawling all over my face in a frenzy. The taste, the smell, feral, low-key, rotting corpse scent, mixed with a sweet and earthy dung taste. 20 years later, I can still remember it. My mom ran into the kitchen, thinking I was being takedown. Took her a minute to realize what was going on. Story 16. My first boyfriend smoked pot like it was going out of fashion, and his diet subsisted of whatever leftovers he could bring home from his fast food job. Needless to say, I learned the hard way that your diet affects how you taste. The first and only time I brought him to completion orally, it hit me like a freight train. It was so bitter it actually hurt my jaw. You know how wine anything with tannins can make the back of your jaw ache a little? It felt like I immediately came down with lockjaw. It was so bitter it physically hurt me. I dry heaved all the way to the bathroom where I retched into the sink. The worst part of all of this was no matter how much I brushed my teeth, used mouthwash, etc., it lingered for days. I think for the better part of a week it was the only thing I could taste and smell. The smell was almost ammonia-like, a sickly, chemically sweet smell that makes you ill if you think on it too hard. Story 17. In the Netherlands, we have soup made from peas. It's popular in cold times, etc. So I made it myself. It has in some cases meat in it, so I bought the meat that would go in it. Little did I know the meat was already going bad. So when the soup was ready, it had the most vile, disgusting taste I ever tasted. Threw it away, and 20 minutes later, I was vomiting my guts out everywhere. Every time I see the soup or I get it offered, I need to gag. Story 18. Essentially my own shoot, so I had surgery to make my ileostomy permanent. And when they did it, my body said, nah, I'm gonna stop working right. It's called ileus. And after going most of the way through my small intestines, whatever I consumed, basically just broth and crackers at that point, took a U-turn and came back out. 010 do not recommend. Story 19. Not me, but one time my best friend had a slice of leftover pumpkin pie that had been sitting on the counter for 7-ish days. The kitchen was dark and they couldn't see the pie clearly. They brought it back to their room and had a bite. They could immediately tell something was wrong. They went back and checked. The pie was covered in mold. That's not the best part though. According to their mom, the pie had never even been cooked to begin with. It was congealed from rot. That was over 10 years ago and remains to be one of the funniest stories they've told me. Story 20. Tomato is the single most abhorrent taste to me. I couldn't imagine anything worse. If I accidentally get some in my mouth, I immediately start gagging. If I don't get the taste out fast enough, I will actually throw up. I once threw up in my car while driving because I bit into a sandwich that had tomato in it. Story 21. Even my mom, who would tell me to quit whining, felt bad and would have me drink a lot of water to get it off my tongue. Story 22. I still have nightmares about my grandmother's Spanish rice that was just overcooked rice mixed with a can of tomato sauce and then baked in a cake pan in the oven for far too long. It had to be served cut up like a sheet cake. It was so disgusting. Story 23. Most obvious in my mind is the loofah gourd bread I made last night. Some liar on the internet said you could make a 1-1 sub for zucchini in a zucchini bread. No, absolutely not. Tasted like a badly reanimated zombie zucchini bread. Expired sour cream is up there too. There was also a microwave saag paneer kit I bought that tasted like a fudge litter box. There was also a really rancid pickle tequila, I think. I could have used Malort as a chaser, it was so bad. Maybe I should be less adventurous. Story 24. My dad's tobacco spit. As a kid, I loved root beer, and my dad chewed tobacco and would spit it into jars or whatnot. Anyway, I saw a bottle of root beer. You know the one in a tinted bottle so it all looks brown anyway? I took a big swig of it, and it was not root beer. Worst thing I've ever tasted. Story 25. Someone gave me a century egg at a Christmas party once. She was so nice and it was a cultural treasure, so I had to try it in front of her. Just put the whole thing in your mouth. Every cell in my body was focused on not gagging. I genuinely couldn't tell if the texture or taste was worse. It was like fermented, rotten rubber and goo. Absolutely horrendous. I guess it's an acquired taste, but I will not be pursuing that. Just remembering it makes me want to go wash my mouth out. Story 26. I like to gross my coworkers out by trying just about any cat dog treat we get donated. I work at an animal shelter. Most of them just taste like really bland human food. But I tried this cat treat that was supposed to be some kind of fish-flavored thing, but good Lord, it was bad. And the taste was stuck in my mouth for a while. Story 27. When I had to get a CAT scan, the doctors didn't prep me as they were supposed to. The doctor grabbed a foam cup and poured hot water in it, and then grabbed some brown vial and poured it into the cup, and told me to drink it all. It's the first time I ever drank something that's made me want to throw up. I got almost all of it down, but I had to stop because I was going to throw up. Don't know what he gave me. Made me have massive diarrhea not even 30 minutes later, but it tasted horrible. All I know is it wasn't that salt solution they give you before colonoscopies that is pretty much cherry salt water. I can drink that just fine. Story 28. Just yesterday, the Pringles sour cream and onion pickle pouch collab. The pickle somehow rotted in the pouch. Smelled like sewage. I convinced myself, nah, that's just how wet sour cream and onion Pringles would smell. Bit into it. It was mush inside and smelled even worse. Nearly threw up. Story 29. I ended up with peritonsillar abscesses during a bad infection. Pus was leaking from them straight into my mouth for a couple days, and I had to keep a spit cup nearby while bedridden because my tonsils were so swollen I could barely even swallow water. Vile and incredibly painful. Story 30. I once had an abscess in an inner ear canal area that just would not burst until one day it popped and spewed rotten pus and blood and whatever down my throat. I have never vomited so hard again in my life, and the memory of that taste will haunt me forever. Story 31. One time when I was a kid, I ate a Brazil nut, and it tasted the way poop smells, is the only way I can think to describe it. It must have been rotten. Gee, I was standing over the toilet for a long time, feeling like I was going to throw up. In my 30s now, and still very much remember. Story 32. I used a half-tipsy glass of water next to my bed as an ashtray for a few days, think 60 or 70 butts. I woke up patched in the middle of the night, grabbed the wrong glass, and was on my second swallow when my half-awake brain twigged something was wrong. 100 the worst taste, texture, and consistency you could possibly imagine. Story 33. I like trying new foods, but have only twice had to reverse my decision into a napkin. Once was squid liver sashimi. Appeared once on our local pub menu. No one liked it. The other was a Hershey bar. Maybe it was out of date or something, but it tasted like vomit. I was looking forward to trying one when I visited the U.S., so it was disappointing. Story 34. Cigarette in my can of Coke. Thanks, Mom. Ruined future me. Smoking and coffee for me from a young age. Second place goes to my first ever work outing. Drink, bring a red light, Tabasco sauces, and an unholy mix of whatever else it was. Never wanted to puke from flavor alone before. Story 35. When I was very small, my father liked to use the word yucky bucks to denote something I did not like. Pretty self-explanatory. One day he gave me a glass of apple juice and I cried so hard because I didn't know what I had done that was so terrible that I deserved yucky bucks. Apparently he had used an old, God knows how old, milk glass and added apple juice. Definitely do not recommend. Story 36. Oyster shot with a quail egg, somewhere in London. Couldn't be rude and turn it down. Was a big gathering. I had to bite the inside of my mouth to keep from vomiting right there on the table. My eyes filled with tears. It was like eating a dead baby bird. I will never forget that. Story 37. Went to Beijing and had this weird bean juice that my friend said to try it. It's literally called sour bean juice, the most unpleasant, foul-smelling thing you can drink. They fermented a bean, made it into a juice, and bottled it. As a good friend, after I took a sip, my friend also had it too. We both gagged and went for ice cream. It tastes horrible. That thing was stuck in your mouth for whole day. Your breath smells horrible, and every time you burp, that bean juice comes out. Never again. Story 38. Durian tastes like vomit and the smell of hot garbage to me. I tried to like it because people swear up and down it has this vanilla creamy taste, and every time I regret my decision, especially since the taste lingers and I can't wash it down. Like, nope, I have to constantly burp and taste it all over again. Fried scorpion is second place. Most bugs taste slightly nutty. Scorpions taste like dirt and decay. Their outer shells hurt your mouth while chewing, and I'm truly convinced that people in Thailand only eat this if they live in absolute poverty-stricken areas, and it is being sold just to mess with tourists. Story 39. Rancid human breast milk. I'm a 49-year-old married father of two. When my wife was breastfeeding, she expressed milk so I could feed the baby from a bottle. The expressed milk was stored in the fridge. Due to tiredness, bad admin, and inexperience, I found a bag of milk at the back of the fridge that I didn't know was fresh or not. Baby was screaming. Wife was asleep. I needed to decide if I could use it, so dipped my finger in and tasted it. It was rancid. 10 years later, I can still remember that taste. Story 40. Any Irish kid will remember vividly that we got milk cartons in school every day in the 80s-90s. No idea what the kids get nowadays, mind you. Anyway, one day in my early teens, my little bro, maybe 6-ish at the time, and I was like 12, 13, came home from school and told me he kept his milk carton for me. I got a mouthful of thick, sour milk. I gagged, spit it out, and proceeded to keep gagging, while my poor, sweet little brother looked sad because he thought he did a good thing for me. I had to smile through the gag and give him a thumbs up and tell him he was great. He skips off happy. I checked the EXP date, and it had gone off like 3 weeks prior. Even thinking of it makes me gag. To this day, I am still extra sensitive about milk. I go mad if it's left on the counter, and will throw it out if it smells even slightly different or a few days short of the EXP date. Story 41. Tequila. I chugged it because my friend gave it to me in a juice bottle, and only like 15 of it was OJ, and I was really thirsty. It burned like hell. Mind you, I was 14. It was around 6:30 a.m. I hadn't eaten anything, and I'm very lightweight. I continued on with class tipsy, and then the next day I was in a Raleigh bad hangover. Somehow, though, I kept it from my parents and teachers. Story 42. As someone who has tried a lot of disgusting foods, i.e. natto, anchovies, sardines, kimchi, black licorice, gefilte fish, century egg, tripe, pig's feet, canned chicken, chicken liver, geta, fish sauce, etc. My answer has got to be rhubarb pie. I'm so sorry. Story 43. On my honeymoon, I went to the Dominican Republic. We were at a really nice resort, and while I was in the bathroom, my wife was in the restaurant getting food. She knows I'm adventurous about food, and she grabbed this really fancy-looking dish in a cup. I can't remember all of it, but it had an assortment of very thinly sliced vegetables of some sort, green onion, and then it was topped with a mussel and fish roe. It was in a little wine shot glass thing, and so I poured it right in my mouth. I chewed, and immediately my mouth was hit with the most acrid, bitter taste I've ever had in my life. It was mixed with something just funky, not rotten. I just can't explain. I immediately held back the urge to vomit. I got up and ran to the bathroom and spit into the toilet. I had to rinse and rinse my mouth to get the bitter taste out, which didn't leave for hours. I don't know what the deal was. It was horrible. Story 44. At a party. It was dessert time. There were chocolate chip cookies and milk. The available cups were white styrofoam. I grabbed one and set it on the table. Then I went to the fridge to get milk. I poured the milk, took a bite of chocolate chip cookie, went to wash it down, expected milk. Instead, I got a mixture of half salt, half milk. Unbeknownst to me, my aunt was in the process of refilling a salt shaker. She used a styrofoam cup to receive salt she poured from a large salt container. Then she was going to use the foam cup to pour into a salt shaker. I drank a huge gulp of half milk, half salt. 010 don't recommend. Story 45. Got a parasite years ago. Along with the entire family, we ate at Burger King together, and the city had an outbreak at the time, but no one went to check out the Burger King while my home and practices were inspected. The medication came in a capsule form only, which was fine for Mr. and I, but the kids' dose was half, which meant I had to open them up and give each kid half. I was warned it would taste real bad, so give them applesauce or something. There were 2 3-year-olds and 1 6. I put applesauce on a spoon, meds then more on top, and got each a glass of chocolate milk ready, and told them to swallow the applesauce real fast and drink the milk. They were troopers and did just as told. I accidentally tasted 1 grain, and it was so vile. I can't believe these kids managed not to taste it at all, so extra kudos to them. My youngest granddaughter got the same parasite recently, and apparently the treatment is still vile. Story 46. When I was a teenager, had a sleepover over at a buddy's house. His parents were gone. We sat at the kitchen table playing cards, smoking a little ganj, dipping Skol, and drinking beer out of red Dixie cups. We also each had red Dixie cups as spit cups. I picked up a cup and took a long, deep pull of beer. But it wasn't my beer cup, it was my spit cup. Quit dipping that very night. Story 47. As a teenager, I really liked shrimp, and my dad thought he should get me a tray of them with cocktail sauce to see if I'd like it. The literal second the cocktail sauce hit my tongue, I puked. Tried it again at a later date. Again, immediately tasted so bad I puked. Cocktail sauce is by leaps and bounds the worst thing I have ever tasted, Lamau. Story 48. My mom got me a Shirley Temple at a wedding. I take a sip, expecting a sweet lemon, lime, and cherry taste. It had fudge vodka in it. I'm under 21, so I had a sense of security here. I was 100% positive this would not be an alcoholic beverage. I didn't even think about the possibility. Now imagine being someone who has never drank adult beverage, expecting a sweet taste in their drink, and getting vodka instead. I swallowed it before I even processed the taste. God, it was awful. The psychological impact that had on me in the moment was insane. It didn't just taste bad to me. I wasn't expecting it either. She didn't believe me when I said it had adult beverage until she tasted it. She didn't know they were Shirley Temples with adult beverage in them. She thought they were going to be regular Shirley Temples with Sprite and cherry syrup. The absolute jump scare of tasting vodka in a Shirley Temple made it 10x more disgusting to me. Complete betrayal of Shirley Temple trust. Story 49. 7. Potassium silicate solution. It's sweet, but the most disgusting thing you'll ever taste. I immediately spit it out and rinsed my mouth out for several minutes. I was violently ill within 20 minutes and did not well for a couple hours. I got a mouthful by accident. Someone used an empty water bottle to hold some excess solution in making it. Story 50. My second round of COVID, I got prescribed Paxlovid. I had lost my sense of taste, but I could taste those. That shoot tasted like licking a 9-volt battery, mixed with the bitterant from canned air, with undertones of rotten avocado. Worse, it made everything I ate taste like that too. I stopped eating and lost 10 pounds. Story 51. My great-grandmother put castor oil in Delsum cough syrup one time and gave it to me as a child. I already disliked Delsum, but the addition of castor oil made it so nauseating I could barely manage to swallow it. Then there was the fact that I was coughing and was on laxatives. Not a good combo. To this day, nobody in family knows why in the fudge she decided to make me take that combo for a cough. Story 52. At a Vietnamese friend's house, he asked if I wanted some fish sauce. I was thinking some kind of cocktail sauce or tartar sauce to go with the shrimp spring rolls, so I said okay. I like to take a tiny taste of sauce before I put it on anything, and I got a mouthful of rancid fish runoff, the vilest and most loathsome thing I've ever tasted. Story 53. It smelled like they let the goat ferment and tasted like passing. I forced it all out as soon as we left their eyesight. Story 54. I went to a Michelin star restaurant and had a dish that was oyster-based. I almost let it up at the table. It was so awful, and the taste lingered for the whole meal. I accidentally inhaled a bunch of real gross bong water once. Full mouthful with debris. The oyster was worse. Story 55. I got COVID a few months ago and took Paxlovid. About 2 hours after taking the pills, my entire mouth would fill up with this violently bitter, metallic, poisonous taste that did not wash away no matter how much water I drank or how much brushed my teeth and gargled, and it would last for hours. I always knew it was time to take my next dose when the horrible flavor dissipated. It tasted like hot earwax and your mom telling you that she's not mad, just disappointed. But on the other hand, I did not die or end up in the hospital, and for that, I am profoundly grateful. Story 56. I'm a picky eater, so I don't try things that I feel like I definitely won't like blue cheese or something. My dumbass 16-year-old self thought it would be a good idea to crush a bunch of benzos and pour them in a bottle of soda. Of course, it was fudge disgusting and wouldn't completely dissolve. I ended up chugging the 500 milliliters bottle in about 3 tries because I didn't want to waste it. And of course, sipping it slowly would prolong my suffering. I got unbelievably fudge up and ended up sleeping for a few hours on a park bench while my friends were chilling. They were apparently pinching me and hitting me in the stomach to see if I was dead, but I didn't react at all. Story 57. Moldy cantaloupe. Camp Cook just kept adding fruit to the fruit tray without checking to see if the old fruit was bad. I walked by the tray, quickly grabbed a piece of cantaloupe, popped it into my mouth, and it disintegrated. Horrible flavor, mold goo minus 22710. Story 58. The prep liquid for a colonoscopy is pretty high up there. It tastes rancid, and you have to drink the whole 4-liter bottle. The worst. Probably what came up when I was vomiting in hospital because my intestines were swollen shut. It wasn't good at all. Let's just say you're vomiting more than just food and bile when it gets that bad. Story 59. I always carry a reusable bottle of water with me. I have several. One time I filled it with fruit water at my hotel while traveling. I guess I left it on my desk at work a while, using another water bottle. One day I picked up the wrong bottle and took a swig. Months-old fermented and moldy fruit water. That was the foulest thing I've ever had in my mouth. Story 60. When I was a kid, my neighbors had this really old yellow lab. Cisco was its name. I was playing outside and landed on me knee right in its chute. It was real mushy. I stared at it for a little bit and then wiped it off with my hand and licked it. IDKY. But I remember it tasted exactly like I thought it would. Story 61. When I was younger, I would leave open soda cans next to my bed sometimes with soda still in them. One night I was really thirsty, wanted water but didn't want to get up, so I just said, fudge it, I'll have soda. Drank it, and it didn't taste bad, but it felt like a bunch of critters running around in my mouth. I was so tired and went back to sleep. Next morning I saw the can was infested in ants. Story 62. I had a chocolate protein shake I thought I dropped on the ground, and that's why it had expanded, even though it was sealed. It had fermented, and I got to taste sour, chunky chocolate protein shake. Never again. Taste was abysmal and took hours to leave my mouth. Story 63. Brunost, a.k.a. brown cheese. I spat it right out, and my mouth was watering for a bit afterward as I just wanted to be sick. Also, I once took a bite of a pancake at a cafe, and I got this putrid, powdery chalk taste, spat it out, and it was blue. I look at the pancake and there was blue mold in it. Absolutely foul. Story 64. I was in an old cabin where the owner had died about a year before. We were going through her pantry and found long expired crackers. I took a bite. It was a saltine cracker. It had the texture of a sponge and tasted like what I imagined mothballs would. Story 65. Yesterday, my roommate pulled a prank and put some dog kibbles in my oatmeal. Needless to say, I threw up violently. Oh, also, there's the famous durian. While people say it tastes good despite its otherworldly nasty smell, I dared to try. But being blind, I smelled it before going to bite, and I just couldn't. I gagged for hours, and it felt like the smell was soaked in my nostril hair for days. Story 66. Invited to my new girlfriend's grandparents' house for Christmas. I was on my best behavior. Sat down at the table and engaged in small talk. About 20 minutes went by, and everyone was getting hungry, while the matriarchs of the family were getting the food ready for everyone. Picture a mixture of mold, fur, rotten soft flesh, and you're not far from what I was going through. Managed to swallow it without anyone noticing my distress too much. Then as the aftertaste permeated my sinus and trying not to vomit all over the table, all I could smell taste was this horrid, moldy flavor. My girlfriend said, "Hey, you didn't just eat one of those, did you?" I sheepishly said yes. Then the entire table burst out laughing. Turns out those walnuts had been there since the 80s. And even back then, as kids, all of her family knew that they were for decorative purposes only, and had been there for many years, and no one should ever eat one. Embarrassing, to say the least. I'm still the butt of everyone's jokes when it comes to walnuts on her side of the family. I can still taste it to this day. Story 67. When I was a kid visiting my grandma, I had a bowl of ice cream, and oh, heck yeah, Grandma also had chocolate syrup. Loaded that thing up, took a bite. It was, apparently, somehow, made in hell. Sugar-free chocolate syrup. And this was before the days of good artificial sweeteners, mind you. Or maybe they did exist, but the sadist behind this demon spawn product just elected not to use them. Anyway, that stuff tasted like fiery, burning garbage. It was so bad that I immediately stopped eating it, found out the cause in horror, and then wanted to toss the whole bowl and try again. Sans sauce. My last clear memory of the event is my parents very unfairly telling me to finish it all, although I can't remember if I persuaded them to see reason. Still, that taste lingers in my memory. Terrible stuff. And I say this as a dark chocolate enjoyer too. Less sugar is not no sugar. Story 68. Small batch craft beer. A friend brought several growlers of craft beer from a local brew pub. Most were typical bitter, over-concocted beer, but one, dark, muddy, foamy atrocity stood out. I took a small glass trying to be polite, started drinking it, and my stomach said, nope. I could not force myself to swallow it. It was worse than the stuff they give you before a colonoscopy. I waited. Everybody else kind of nursed it for a couple of minutes and said some cliché shoot about it being earthy and like a dark Guinness and roasted blah blah blah. Finally, I said, y'all are full of shoot. That was straight burnt sewage, and you know it. Everybody laughed and agreed except the guy who brought it, who swore it was the beer the pub was famous for, and we just didn't have refined enough palates to understand how good it was. Story 69. So I was trying to juggle being a new housewife, working full-time, and being severely addicted to Halo 2. I was prepping tacos in the living room, like cutting the onion and tomatoes between rounds of Team Slayer. I threw the scraps in a 32-ounce big gulp. I can still see the scene in my head like it was fucking yesterday. We were not the best young adults, and often the place was trashed. We were gaming out. So the next day I grabbed the wrong cup and took a big fucking swig. It was the most foul, rank liquid I've ever had that took the day to get the onion out of my mouth. Story 70. When I was a kid, my grandpa kept a lidded cup full of water for long drives for me to sip on. One day there was a different cup from McDonald's there instead. I thought, sweet, hope I got a Happy Meal. Grabbed it and started chugging. Grandpa was a smoker. It was flat, watery Sprite mixed with cigarette ashes and cigarette butts. He felt so bad. He quit smoking not too long after. I like to think I helped with that. Story 71. One night I was eating chips in my bed. After some time I felt a piece under me. I reached down and bit it. Then I felt liquid flood my mouth and tiny legs clench around my fingertip. It wasn't a chip. It was a stink bug that fell from the ceiling into my bed. Story 72. Not as crazy as some of these other comments, but was on a trip to Oregon many years ago, out in this small town pretty much in the middle of nowhere, and we were getting hungry. Only food around was a Carl's Jr. I don't know if it was just an off day for the workers or if it was spoiled food, but the hamburger I attempted to eat that day was the single nastiest thing I've had in my mouth and have never even come close to a Carl's Jr. since.